It has never been easier to get into the world of podcasting, and the fastest way to get started is to use your phone as the tool to record, edit, and distribute your very own audio or video podcast. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to record professional looking and sounding podcasts right from your mobile phone, as well as how to get your podcast online for the world to hear. So before you start recording podcast episodes, you do need to think about what's called your podcast packaging. So that's just a fancy word that we use to describe what is it you're going to even be talking about and who are you trying to reach with your podcast? So who's your target audience? What are you talking about in a really broad sense, like a really broad niche or category like food, entertainment, culture, or even sports? And then if you chose one of those, like entertainment, maybe you focus on something very specific, like Taylor Swift. Like there's huge demand, huge target market for Swifties out there. And then maybe like on the opposite end, but maybe not so opposite, would be like sports. And you could focus on like the Kansas City Chiefs news updates. And if you know what I'm talking about, maybe there's some overlap between like the Swifties and the Travis Kelce fans. I don't know. But you do need to lock in your podcast topic as well as your podcast title. So what's the title of your podcast going to be? And here you can do some competitor analysis and just see like, well, if you want to be like a Taylor Swift podcast, there's probably already hundreds out there. So how are you going to differentiate your title to stand out amongst the crowd of Taylor Swift podcasters? Along with your title, you'll also need to lock in your cover art for your podcast. And Canva is typically the tool that I'd recommend somebody start with because they have a ton of different templates. You could just search like podcast cover art template, and they have hundreds and hundreds of templates to get started to choose from. Or you could try to make one completely from scratch or hire a graphic designer to create your own cover art. Whatever the case, it's definitely something you're going to want to think about. Once you have a good idea of your podcast packaging, next comes dialing in your tech for your podcast. When you're recording from a mobile phone, there are a few pieces that you want to think through as to how to make your podcast look and sound the best. The first being, what recording software are you going to use to record your podcast episodes? And we actually reached out to Riverside to partner on this video because we do believe Riverside is the best mobile app for recording podcasts because it does give you the ability to export both an audio and or video file when you are recording podcast episodes, which is actually essential for podcast distribution and letting the most amount of people see your podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Riverside has great editing tools like text-based editing, clips creation. You can also record in 1080p or 4K. There's lots of features we'll talk about in just a little bit. So we're going to be using Riverside for this tutorial. For the camera, of course, you can just use whatever phone you have. I have the iPhone 16 Pro here that I'm going to use for this video. And typically we do recommend you use the rear cameras because they just have a better image results when you use those rear cameras. But if you prefer to use the front facing camera and it makes your life easier, you can go ahead and do that as well. I would encourage you though to upgrade your microphone. And the microphone that I'm going to use for this video is a mic I've talked about on the channel many times. It's the Fifine AM8. And this is about a $50 microphone. That's both an XLR microphone, so you could use this with XLR interfaces, but more importantly, it's a USB-C microphone as well. So you can plug this directly into the USB-C slot on your iPhone and instantly upgrade the audio of your video to sound way better. And I'm actually using another Fifine AM8 for this entire video, so you can hear how this audio would sound if you used it in a podcast environment. There's also a headphone jack on the rear of the microphone, which is really important if you are wanting to monitor your audio if you have a guest on your Riverside call. Very important to have this on your microphone. This mic can be as cheap as like $50, and it even comes with a tabletop mic stand with that variant, or you could grab the variant that has like this boom arm that you can attach to the table, which is more like $65 or so. In any case, it's a really affordable mic solution, and honestly, the sound quality is really good. And the last piece of gear you might want to think about grabbing is some sort of tripod solution for your phone. This is the Ulanzi MT16, and it's just a really simple $20 tabletop tripod that works great. You just pop this right onto your desk, put your phone in the phone holder slot, and then you can plug in your microphone and you're good to start recording. Now that you have your tech dialed in, it's time to open up your recording app. So we're using Riverside for this video. So go ahead and download the Riverside app. It's actually free to get started and you can do a lot of things completely for free with the Riverside app, but I am using the Pro plan for this tutorial. And if you want to try out the Riverside Pro plan for 1 month free, you can grab a computer and sign up from the Riverside desktop app using code ThinkMedia at checkout to get 1 month free of their Pro plan. So once your account is set up, you're going to want to go to the home screen of Riverside and then swipe over to the left and make sure that you have created a new studio. So you can click that Create New Studio button. If you've already made a studio, you'll see right here, like I have a Think Media studio created, and I will use that for this tutorial. Inside of your studio, you'll see all of your past recorded episodes, as well as the ability to start creating a new episode by clicking that Create button. And right there, you'll have the option to hit record, and that's what you'll select to start recording your next episode. Now, this will open up the lobby screen, and you can see your name down below, and you can also add some effects if you want to add some effects to your background. And if you rotate your phone sideways, it will go to horizontal orientation mode, and then you could use the rear-facing camera and shoot in a horizontal aspect ratio, which is probably what you want to do if you're recording a video podcast. Now, while you're still in this lobby screen, this is where you're going to want to plug in your microphone to get it all set up. So just take your standard USB-C cable and plug that directly into your iPhone. And sometimes you'll see a series of pop-ups, and depending on what microphone you're using, you might want to select a different option. Now, if you see the option that asks if you're wearing headphones and your microphone does have a headphone port, then go ahead and select yes that you are wearing headphones. And same thing for this wired connection notification. It might ask if you're only using the wired connection as a microphone, but if your mic does have the headphone option as well, just select no, and that you actually can use the microphone for multiple purposes. And if you do have any issues getting your particular microphone connected, I'll put a link down in the description to help you troubleshoot some issues. Now, at this point, you have 3 different options that you can use to record your podcast. You can choose to podcast together. So this is where you would invite a guest onto your podcast with you. You can simply hit that invite link, copy a link to send to a guest, and that guest can just click right on that link and join your podcast studio, no problem. There's also the solo option, which would be for a solo video podcast. And then there is the audio option, which would be for an audio only podcast. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to put it in the solo video podcast mode. Once you're ready to record, just go ahead and hit the record button inside of Riverside, and that will initiate a 5-second countdown timer before you start recording. And then you're ready to roll. You're ready to record your podcast episode, and you can record for as long as you'd like. Once you're finished recording, just hit the stop button and then give Riverside just a little bit of time because it's uploading that video and audio file to the cloud so you can use it on multiple devices. Like if you want to edit from your computer or your smartphone or wherever, it's a cloud-based editing software, so you're able to access all those files. So just give it a little bit of time. And same if you were recording with a guest, you want to make sure that your guest leaves their phone on for a few minutes to upload that video file. Once your video is finished, you can see that your recording is ready, and you can hit view and edit instantly to view that recorded episode. Now, after you're finished recording, you're definitely going to want to edit your podcast episode as well as export it. So for editing, actually Riverside has a nice mobile editor built into their app interface, and you can click on your podcast episode and just hit that scissor button right there to start editing. And because you're on a mobile phone, I think it's going to default to editing in a 9:16 aspect ratio. But if you just click the little button down in the corner, you'll be able to adjust that to a 16:9 aspect ratio if you did indeed record horizontally. You'll then use the trim button to make sure that you get rid of any dead space at the beginning or end of your podcast episode. And then you can use the cut button, which opens up the text-based editor to start editing things out of your podcast episode, or maybe you messed up part of the recording, or maybe your guest did or whatever. You can use this, which is a really cool like text-based thing where you just highlight certain phrases and then you can click delete, and then it will delete those from your podcast recording. And it's nice because you can actually play back your podcast episode while you're editing, so you can listen to it and actually watch it with the little preview window in the corner in real time, and then make adjustments to the editor as you see fit. If you want to, you can actually add captions if you want with their built-in captioning feature, which is really cool. And you can also do this if you want to create short clips out of your podcast episode, which is going to save you a lot of time for producing social media content. When you're all ready to go, you can click the export button in the top right corner, and that's going to open up your export settings. And right now we're set to export video, but if you wanted just to export the audio, you could click that button up top to change it to export audio. For video quality, I'd recommend at least 1080p resolution, if not that 4K option right there, as well as making sure you hide the watermark. If you are on the Pro plan, you'll hide the watermark. I'm not really a big fan of removing background noise or normalizing audio levels, but if you feel like something went wrong with your audio recording and your levels are all over the place, you can click those buttons, and that'll help normalize the levels for you and your guests if you had one. At that point, you can click export video, and it's going to go ahead and export the video and notify you when the export is complete. You also want to switch over to the audio format as well and make sure you export the audio file for your podcast. That's going to be really important for hosting your podcast online. For audio quality, I would prefer to export in the WAV format because that's just going to give you a better quality audio file. So go ahead and choose WAV. You can also choose MP3 if you would prefer. And if you want to, again, remove background noise or normalize your audio levels, you can do that right here. So go ahead and click Export Audio and make sure you wait a few minutes for those exports to complete. And after they're completed, your home screen should look something like this, where you have your exported audio file ready to be leveraged as well as the video file. Now, if you click on one of those files, you can play it back and view your finished recording. And you can also perform a series of operations like copying the link to maybe send it to an editor if you're working with an editor, or you can save it to your device, which is the most important thing. So at this point, I would save those audio and video files to my smartphone so that I can then distribute those files for our next step, which is hosting and distribution of your podcast. So obviously your podcast needs to actually live somewhere and be hosted with some sort of site so that people can listen to your podcast. You can't just leave it on your smartphone and expect people to be able to hear it. So we've got to host it somewhere so it can be distributed to listeners all across the world. Now, one of the newest features with Riverside actually is that they now actually handle podcast hosting, which is a really cool thing. That means that if you're using Riverside to do your recording and your editing, you don't have to actually export and publish all of those files to a different hosting platform. You can now actually use Riverside and it comes included in your Pro plan for your hosting purposes. For this, you'll want to take those exported files from your phone and move them to a computer, or just seamlessly pick up your project by moving over to the Riverside desktop app, which is cloud-based. So your project should still be right there that you were working with on your phone, or even those exported files, so you can start working with them for distribution. When you host your podcast with Riverside, you'll get an RSS feed, which is sort of like a unique link to your podcast, and it contains all your important information, like your cover art, your title, all of those pieces of your podcast. And then it pushes out your episodes to all of the major directories like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube. So you don't have to manually upload that episode to all of those different locations. With Riverside, you can publish your audio or video episodes directly from their app. You can also track performance metrics with simple built-in analytics like streams, top episodes, listener locations, and even which apps people are using to stream your podcast. So instead of trying to use a bunch of different platforms where you're recording and you're editing and your distribution, you can actually do all of this really simply and easily with Riverside. And hosting is one of their latest additions that are going to be really helpful for creators and podcasters. Now, I know we just covered a ton in this video, but honestly, that was the entire process for what it takes to start a podcast completely from scratch just using your smartphone. You can really do almost this entire process right from your smartphone device. And it's a really great tool as a beginner. If you have ideas you want to share with the world and you have a podcast concept that you want to get up and running, really for about $50 to $100, you can get yourself a good quality microphone, a tripod, and a Riverside account, and you're on your way to start producing really high quality podcast episodes. If you do want to give Riverside a try, you can grab a computer and sign up using the link below in the description of this video, and make sure to use code ThinkMedia at checkout to get 1 month free of their Pro plan. And if you do want a more cohesive overview of the distribution strategy for promoting your podcast online, you can click or tap the screen right here to check out this video. That's going to be a huge help for you, and I'll see you over there in that video.